Hi everyone, this is David Young with DIY Wood Carving, and today we're looking at how to carve this simple folk art Santa. These are really easy to carve. We're going to carve them today from a triangle block of wood. So we're going to start with a 1-inch thick piece of basswood. So just cut from a basswood board, 1-inch thick, a triangle that's 3 inches wide on the bottom and 6 inches tall. And we're going to carve that today. I'm just going to use knives. I'm going to use these two knives. You could use just one knife if you wanted to. And there's some steps that you might decide you'd prefer to use a gouge or a V-tool for. But these are really straightforward, pretty simple design. So I'm going to do something a little bit different in this video. Instead of going step by step once, all the way through the entire process, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight 12 easy steps to follow. I'm going to show you a little bit of what to do on each step, what the carving looks like after each step, and maybe make a little bit more of an efficient instructional video here. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so here's step one, and in step one, we're just going to draw the pattern. And in fact, I've actually already done this on this piece of wood. So I'm just going to show you the measurements and how I mark this out. So I already told you that this is 6 inches tall. And so to mark this out first, I'm going to measure 1.5 inches up from the bottom. So I'm going to mark here 1.5 inches up, and then I'm going to go up 1 inch at a time. So this is 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, and 4.5, and I'm going to mark those points going up the middle. Now on each one of those, you can see I've drawn out a horizontal line as well. And so starting with the bottom one, I'm measuring that out. The width of that is 1/2 inch to the right and 1/2 inch to the left. So 1/2 inch on each side, 1 inch total. On the next one, I'm coming in 1/8 inch. So on each side, it's going to be 3/8 to the right and 3/8 to the left. On this one, it's going to be 1/4 inch to the right and 1/4 inch to the left. And on this top one, it's going to be just 1/8 inch to the left and 1/8 inch to the right. Okay, so that's the main pattern lines that I draw in front for reference before I start. On the right side, or on both sides really, then what I do is I draw a center line down the side of the block, okay? And then I mark the same intervals going up the side. So I lay my ruler across here and I mark starting at 1.5 inches, then 2.5, 3.5, 4.5. Now, if you're a math person, you'll say, well, that's not going to be the exact same height as those because it's going in, and you're right, it's not, but it's going to be close enough for our purposes. It'll work fine. Okay, so I do that on both of the sides. And that's it. That's the lines that I draw to reference, and then we'll draw the rest on as we go. All right, and step two here, what I'm going to do is round the corners. So I'm going to take these corners off, the hard corners along each side of the triangle. And to do that, I like to use the biggest knife I have. This is my biggest knife. It's a 2.25 inch OCC roughing knife, and that just makes it really easy for me to get some really big chunks off of it. Now, you might prefer on this step actually to use a chisel, just a flat chisel, and even put it on a flat, table with a stop on it, and you could do that way. It's a little bit awkward to hold, but I'm going to use my big OCC knife, and I'm going to start taking it off like this. And what I try to do is I go at about a 45-degree angle across the corner, and I'm going to try to carve down right up at that 45-degree angle. I'm going to go down right until I get right along the edge of that center line. I'm not going to cut all the way to the center line. I'm just going to get right to the edge of it, about like that. Okay, and I'm going to do that all the way down the side like this. Now, I don't want to lose the center points and the things that I have on here. So I'm just going to mark some of these lines as I go along so that I don't quite lose them, but I will have to remeasure some of them. Okay, so I'm going to go until I have gotten this entire side down at that about a 45-degree angle like that. It does get a little bit tricky to hold on to there. So again, if you would rather do this with a chisel or another way, that's fine. But that's what I'm going to do. So now I've taken that and smoothed out that entire side. The next thing I do is I'm going to just come at a slight angle and take that hard corner off like this. all the way up. And again, I'm a little bit cognizant of I don't want to lose, all of my pattern lines. So if I start drawing them off, I want to just extend that so I can see it and I can redraw the width of it on later, but I want to keep that as a reference point and do that all the way across like that. Okay. Now, when I switch to the other side, I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I'll show you. And what I'm trying to do is make sure if I'm coming at the same angle, then when I come across the center here, this line, this ridge up the middle should really just be an extension of that center line, right? And so I can do that and keep working my way down, and that center line will go right up. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause and I'll show you what this looks like when I'm done with this step. All right. So here I have finished rounding the corners, just like I said, like a 45-degree angle off there as deep as I can, and then another line across there. Same thing on the back on both sides. And then I'm going to show you one other additional thing that I do just on the back. Now that I've done that, I've got this flat section on the back. So what I do is I just keep extending my cuts across the back because I want to make sure that the entire piece is carved. You could just leave it flat, but I think it looks better if I've got at least even some small facets on there. So I kind of keep going across at a light angle to carve that flat part off, keep rounding the sides and just up towards the top like that. And then I usually turn it around and I can carve it in the other way down here so that I've carved that entirely flat. Now, I don't put a lot of detail on the back of these. I don't feel like I need to. They're really designed to just stand forward on a shelf or countertop or whatever. But if you want to carve more detail on the back, you can. You can see I'm not choosing to do that. All right, and then the last thing I want to note is that I did, after I cut these in on the top and bottom, I did kind of redraw my lines here. And then I wanted to make sure that I had these widths drawn again. So on the bottom one again, it's going a 1/2 inch to the right and a 1/2 inch to the left. Next one, it's going 3/8 inch to the right, 3/8 to the left, a 1/4 inch to the right, 1/4 inch to the left on that one. And this one is just 1/8 of an inch on either side. Now, this is what I'm going to do before we go on to the next step. I am going to draw from the end of this bottom one up to the mark. Remember, I marked these same distances on the side. I'm just going to connect those in a line like that from the bottom one up to the next one. And then I'm going to come to this one up to the next one. And then I'm going to come to this one up to the next one. Okay, I don't actually have to do it on the top one. And then go ahead and do that on the other side as well. And that wraps up step 2. All right, so now we're ready for step 3. Remember, we've rounded the corners on the triangle and we reconnected these lines on the side going up on each side. So in step 3 now, we're going to rough out the arms. So I'm going to cut out the top and the bottom of the arms. This wide section here is going to be the arms. So bottom of the arms, top of the arms. So to do that, again, I like using my really big roughing knife for this. I'm going to place a stop cut right along that pattern line that I drew along the side. That's going to be right where the bottom of the arms are. And I'm going to carve up into it like this. And then I'm going to keep doing that and make it a little bit deeper like that. Okay. And do the same thing coming down from the other side. So stop cut along that line. And you can see that my cut is going down below that other pattern line. Totally fine. We're going to work with that here in just a second. So I'm going to do that down the side like that. Okay. Now I've got that notched in, on both sides. And now, again, I'm using my long knife for a reason. I'm going to put a stop cut along the bottom of there and carve up to it like this. And we can almost do kind of more of a V cut right along that pattern line like that. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to be a little bit off on these sides, and that's okay. So, but what we want to do is try to make them pretty clean. So if I'm starting carving up here like this, and then I'm coming down, I may not get everything on the right side. So then I'm just going to keep extending my cut on this side like this, and I'm going to extend my cut on the bottom and try to get them to be at about the same angle so that they line up. But if they don't, I can use my knife along the corner here and kind of clean that up a little bit. Okay. So in that way, I'm just kind of defining where the bottom of those arms are going to be on each side. And I do want this to be a little deeper. So I'm just going to dig this down a little deeper like that. And that's going to be about good. You don't want to go too deep on this, because once you come back and start, and you'll see once we come back and start carving the gloves in, we'll be making some really, we'll be deepening it even more. So you don't have to go too deep, but I do want to go a little bit deep. You can see the depth of that is probably, we'll just say that is, yeah, about 1/8 of an inch deep. Okay. Now, I'm going to pause, and you're going to do the exact same thing on these two lines, which is the top of the arms and the bottom of the beard. Okay, so this is what it looks like at the end of step 3. I just did the exact same thing to notch the top of the arm, bottom of the beard section here, across the bottom of the beard, and the top of the arm over there that we did down here. Okay, so that's it for step 3. We have roughed out the arms. All right, so in step 4 here, we are going to rough out the face area. And first I'm going to need to draw some pattern lines on. So I've got this line that kind of defines the top of the forehead here. That would be this point right here. And what I want to do is I want to draw the line for the sides of the hood to define the face area. So I'm going to start here, and then I'm going to mark a spot. If I'm looking at this diagonal that marks the top of the beard, I'm going to come over, I'm going to estimate it, but about 1/3 of the way down. I'm just going to put a little mark there. And then I'm going to follow kind of straight down from that and put a little mark here at the bottom of the beard. And then I'm going to draw a line. It's not going to be a perfectly straight line. It's going to arc a little bit, and that's okay. Out to that line, and then straight down to that bottom line. And that's going to kind of define where my hood is going. So again, I'm going to go about 1/3 of the way across that pattern line, and then I'm going to go straight down to the bottom of the beard, and then I'm going to draw that out. Now this is really going to define how wide your face is. And so if you make this narrow, you'll have a narrower face. You'll notice that the face on this one is a little bit narrower than the face on the one on the right. And so the wider you make it, the wider and the larger the face will be. The smaller you make it, the more narrow the face will be. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you do want it to be symmetrical. And that's why I try to kind of estimate that at about 1/3 of the way across. Okay. So I'm going to rough that area in now for where I want the face to be. And so I'm going to start by putting a stop cut with the tip right at the corner of where the forehead is going to be there. And then I'm going to put another one right there. Okay, coming down the side. Let me do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to put a stop cut right at the top of that, coming with my tip going right into the corner there. And then another one just kind of coming down here. And before I cut the sides of the hood, I'm just going to cut that in. I put those 2 stop cuts in. So now if I carve that little chip corner out, just kind of come up on the side here, I should be able to easily get a little corner out and then carve the forehead up into there. And I'm just defining the top of what the forehead is going to look like, right? Then I want to roughen where the hood is actually going to go. So now I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I'm going to run it down right along that pattern line that I drew for where I want that to go, all the way down. I'm going to raise my knife up here so so you can see that. I don't want to draw my knife across the arms, but I'm going to make a deep stop cut all the way along that line there. Okay, like that. I'm going to flip this guy around, And now I'm going to carve along the side. I'm paying attention to where the tip of my knife is. I don't want it to go deep into the side of the hood, but I'm going to carve kind of at an angle along there to get rid of that line that I just made along the side. Now, I'm pretty comfortable using my knife for this. I actually feel like I can be more precise with my knife for this. But on some of these cuts, if you want, you could use a V-tool here and you would accomplish a similar kind of thing. I feel like personally I can get it a little bit more precise using the knife, but that's just my level of comfort, right? So I've got that now kind of defining where that is. I'm going to do that a little bit more. I'm going to kind of extend my knife across and make more of a constant angle and just kind of clean that up. And that's good because it kind of makes my head face a little bit further out. It's going to make the sides of the head kind of go back into the hood a little bit more. I'm going to make this a little bit deeper even yet, like that. Okay, good. All right, now I'm going to pause it and you're going to do the same thing on the other side of the hood here. All right, so I just did the same thing on the other side of the hood, and that's going to be it for step 4. We've roughed out kind of the area of where the hood is. So that's it for step 4. All right, in step 5 here, what we're going to do is we're going to smooth the sides. So we have these hard corners on the sides, and we're going to just work our way up and smooth those out. And so on the top, I'm just going to go right above where the bottom of the hood is, or the top of the arm, shoulder area, and I'm just going to carve straight over those pattern lines on the side. Now remember, I didn't carve all the way down to them because it helps me keep it symmetrical as I go, and it also let me see those spots. Remember, we marked these lines where I could draw the pattern lines on, so I didn't go all the way up and do that. So I'm just going to smooth that area there, and I want to keep smoothing down, but you know I'm going to run into these corners here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put in a stop cut about where the bottom of the hood is there. So you can see where the bottom of the hood is. I'm going to put in a stop cut, and I'm going to carve kind of more down along the bottom of the hood, up the sides here like that. And that's going to define kind of where the top of the shoulder is in that notch there. I'm going to extend that back just a little bit like this. You can see that, again, I don't carve way back, but I'm just notching that in back here on the side of the hood. So you can see where that is. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here, just maybe an 1/8 of an inch below the bottom of the arms there. And I'm going to notch that in instead and come along the same angle as the arms. So that's going to look like that. Now at this point, it looks like he's got big hips. So I need to smooth both of these things. I need to smooth the arm here like that. And I'm going to smooth it once and then do the edges on the sides like that. Okay, and then down here, I can smooth this entire section down the side. And my goal is that I don't want it to look like he's got hips kind of jutting into there. So I'm actually going to take this at a little bit of a deeper angle to try to draw it up closer there. And then on each side of that, as I'm getting kind of harder corners, I'm going to just smooth those out on each side like that. Okay. And then I am going to also on this one extend those cuts, make a V cut to kind of extend the bottom of that across the back just a little bit, so that when I look from the front, I can kind of see that. Okay. So that's about it. We could shape those a little bit more later if you need to. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to do it to the other side, and then we'll check back. All right, so here's how we look at the end of step 5 after smoothing the sides. I did the same thing down the left side. So take your time to really round these sides off a little bit. Look for an even taper from the bottom into the arms and from the elbow up to the shoulder area. So it's not pinching in so much as it is an even taper up into there. And I've smoothed all of those flat lines out, you know, on each side. So I'm indenting just a little bit, enough to see the shape, but I still want to keep that overall triangle shape going there. All right, that is step 5. All right, we're on to step 6 here, where we're going to carve the hood. And at this point, I'm going to switch to my 1/2-inch knife. Just a little easier to wield than the really big one. I do like using the really big one for those first few steps. The smaller one's going to be a little easier to handle. Again, you can use whatever knife you're comfortable with. So we're going to go ahead and carve the hood here. And so we're going to start by rounding and cleaning up this area. We really just kind of roughed out the area that we did so far on the hood. And so to do that, I'm going to do a couple things. First, I'm going to come down here and I want to cut just like a little triangle out of the bottom here of where the beard would go into where the hood is. So I'm going to extend that line with the tip of my knife down the side of the hood. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm just going to narrow the beard up into there like this. And so that the beard is kind of coming into the hood there a little bit. Okay. Like that. Now let me do that on the other side. Again, I'm going to extend this stop cut in here, and then I'm going to kind of come across the corner of the beard, keeping that same width on the bottom, but kind of cutting up maybe just an eighth, not even that much, into the edge of the hood there, so that the beard is kind of getting tucked up into the hood. You can kind of see what that looks like here. So the beard is the hood will kind of come down behind the beard here. Okay. Now, once I've done that, I'm ready to start kind of shaping the outline of the beard here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just the tip of my knife, and I'm going to be really careful not to cut the face up with the tip of my knife. And I'm going to just use the tip and start to round what's going to be kind of the front of the hood here, like that. Okay, and I'm going to do that until the hood is almost kind of flat. There should be a flat section of the hood kind of facing the front. So you can see this becomes kind of a flat area of the hood facing towards the front. Now, as I do that, I may come back and kind of clean up the side of the head area going into that hood so it tucks back in there a little bit further. Repeat some of these cuts that I made in the previous or the earlier step where I was just kind of roughing out the shape of where I wanted the hood to be, because then that gives me a little bit more area here to work with, and I can really get a nice flat front to the hood. So you can kind of see what that's looking like there. Okay. On the top here, I'm going to kind of just smooth out the top of the hood, and then I'm going to use the tip of my knife to kind of transition that corner there. Okay. Again, I may need to come back and cut inside the head area and repeat some of these cuts previously to clean that up. And if I've got any little extra wood boogers or stray pieces there, I want to clean those up a little bit as well. Okay, but that's pretty good. Now I've got the front kind of face of the hood facing towards me all the way down on the right side here. Then I'm going to notch the hood back. As I get towards the bottom of the hood, I'm just going to cut it back like this. Okay, and then maybe a little bit further in like that, so that the hood looks like it's getting tucked in kind of more, behind the beard and the head area here, and the head area kind of sticks further out from it. Okay, now I'm going to pause for just a second, and I'm going to do the other side of the hood, and then we'll keep going because there's a little bit more to finishing the hood up. Okay, so I have carved the other side of the hood here the same way that I did on the right. You can see they're about the same width. I've got that kind of flat face facing me. Note that I did kind of carve the forehead up into here a little bit so that I could round out these corners of the top edges of the hood here a little bit more like that. And so I did carve the top of the forehead in here a little bit in order to do that. Now there's a couple other things I want to do to finish carving this hood. The first thing is let's get rid of this top. We don't want the top being pointy like that. So you can see how I carved this top off. What I'm going to do is just come a little bit down from the top, and I'm going to carve kind of like straight across a couple times like this. I want it to look more like the hood is falling backwards behind them. So I'm going to do some really dramatic cuts across the top there, probably angle them again on each side, flatten that out. So it looks more like the hood is falling down the back. And then the other thing I'm going to do is a little notch on the back of the hood. So this is going to line basically about where it doesn't have to be exact, but about where the top of the forehead is, and put a really shallow V cut. So I'm going to put a stop cut in first. I'm going to cut into it from the top of the bottom, a really shallow, long V cut coming down and up to it from both sides, like that. So it looks like the hood is kind of falling back. You can see that there, on the finished one. Okay. So then the last thing that we need to do to finish our hood now is going to be to carve the actual outline of the hood. And so I did clean up. You can see I'm cleaning up the front of this so it lays a little bit flatter. The forehead comes out a little bit in front of it. But what I'm going to have to do is draw an outline of where I want the hood to be. So I'm just going to come right up here, and you can make it as wide or as narrow as you want. I'm going to go right there. It's probably about 1/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to follow, and I'm going to draw a pattern line, down the side, about the same width, like this. And then as I get towards the bottom, I'm going to kind of curve it out down towards the back corner here where I started carving across the back. You can see that there. Okay. Let's do that same thing down along the other side. And I just kind of eyeball it and sketch it as I go, get down to here, and then curve it back to that corner. So I've got it about the same. Okay. Now to carve it, I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to do just a little tiny V cut at the top. And I want that hood to stick out a little bit, or the trim around the hood to stick out a little bit. So I'm going to then carve back behind that so that this is sticking out just a little bit. And then I'm going to have to carve the sides here. I'm going to say this is probably the trickiest part of the whole carving to make clean. So again, if you wanted to use a V tool or something else here, you could, but I'm going to use my knife. I'm going to do a stop cut with the tip of my knife, just drawing along that pattern line that I just drew. Okay, like that. And then I'm going to start to carve into that with the tip of my knife without trying to go too deep. So I'm going to get just the bottom of it there, like that, and then work my way up just a little bit at a time. And this is where I start to, you're carving kind of straight along the grain here, and it'll start to just kind of chunk off a little bit. So you got to be a little careful going along there. I'm going to do that. And then as I get closer to the top, I may just kind of do more of a normal cut like that. Okay. And I'm trying to get it deep enough so that it kind of separates the trim of the hood from the main body of the hood. So that's pretty good. But I've got this really sharp line, right? So I'm going to flip it around. I'm going to use just the tippity tip of my knife. Remember, the tippity tip is that part up there. And I'm just going to kind of smooth out the corners of that. You can see, I had a couple messy lines there. I can smooth that out now with the tip. Carving up towards the top, just really lightly smoothing those edges until I get up to the top. Okay, and connect up to where that is. So that right side of my hood is pretty well done. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to finish up the left, and then our hood will be done. All right, so here we are at the end of step 6. I've carved the hood on both sides, and it's looking good. So that's it for step 6. All right, we're on to step 7 here, where we are going to carve the face. So that means this entire area up in here, the nose, the cheeks, the eyes, the entire face area here. Okay. So we're going to start with the bottom here. I still have my horizontal line here that's separated where the bottom of the face and the top of the beard is going to be, and I'm going to put a stop cut there and carve into it here. Okay, try to keep that about level. And I'll note that I also kind of redrew my center line for the nose area there on the last step. So I've still got that clarity there. So I'm just going to notch that in there where the bottom of that is. Then I'm going to come over and I'm just going to extend this maybe at a very slight angle, pretty much just straight across, back to where the hood is, and I'm just going to keep making that V cut all the way back, and that's just going to define where that is, right? So pretty much just straight across here, maybe just a very slight angle up, definitely not an angle down. And then I'm just checking all of this for symmetry as I go as well. I've been showing you, carving one side and not both sides, but every time I do that, I come back and I check for symmetry. So I'm going to adjust this just a little bit like that. I don't want to go too deep because as I carve in the cheeks and the bottom of the nose, I'm going to get a lot deeper. But I want to make sure I'm consistent and I can get that separation from the beard and the face. So that's pretty good there. Okay. Now, I'm going to draw in some lines. I'm going to come down about a third of the way down from the top, draw a horizontal line of where I want the eyes are. Now, this doesn't have to be perfect. You want it to be straight, horizontal, but exactly how far up or down you go doesn't really matter. I'm going to go to these corners that I still have from where I had those lines, and I'm going to draw them up to that eye line like this, just to the side of those. And you can decide how wide or narrow you want your nose to be, but that's going to be the sides of the nose. This is the bridge of the nose. And then these are going to be your eyes going down the sides. Okay. And actually, I'm going to just, from there now, I'm going to carve in the forehead a little bit. So I have it kind of going up a little bit more. That helps me kind of see it a little better there. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to put the tip in right on the corner of where the eye goes. And I find it easier to just start with the corner of the eyes, get those established. Then I'm going to carve more. So then I'm going to put my knife tip in there also. So I've got right along the eye line and then down the side of the nose. And then I'm just going to kind of come up from about a third of the way down the nose there and carve in. This is not my final line, but it just helps me kind of get it started in a way that's going to be clean, and it's going to show me where the rest of my lines need to go. So I kind of like to start with that, and it just helps me establish where that needs to be. Okay. And I should have them roughly symmetric, even though I'm just getting started here, but that's pretty good for now. Okay. Now that I've got that marked off, I'm going to draw or use my knife to draw a stop cut along the side of the nose there. And then I'm going to use the tip of it without going too far into the side of the nose to just cut along the side like that, and do that a couple times so that the nose really stands out from the cheek, right? So you can see that now my nose is standing out from the cheek. Okay, let's do the same thing over here. I'm going to use the tip of my knife along the side of the nose like that. Be careful not to notch the top of your beard with your knife when you do that. Lift it up as you come down. And I'm going to do the same thing here. Just use the tip to carve the cheek. So the cheek is kind of flat and the nose is laying above it there, right? Get enough that I'll be able to round the nose as I need to. Okay. Now, before I finish the nose and eyes, I'm going to carve the bottom of the nose and the cheeks. So to do that, I'll draw this on. I don't normally, but I'm going to draw on kind of a corner tip off my nose, and drawing it isn't a bad idea if you want to make sure that you're staying symmetric. So I'm going to cut the corner tip off my nose, and then I'm going to cut the corner off of the cheek on both sides there as well. So it's really going to be kind of a triangle that I cut across. So I'm going to cut the corner of the nose like that with my knife, stick the tip in. Then on the cheek, I'm going to stick my tip in down. And then if I cut across the top of the beard area there, I should be able to relieve those chips and make them pop out. Okay. See that? Okay. Same thing over here. I'm going to cut in the corner of my nose and the corner of my cheek, and then right along the ridge there, straight across. Those will pop out. So I've got that. So now I've got that separation from my nose and the cheeks. Okay. I'm going to repeat those just a little bit here and make sure that they're clean cuts and make sure that they're staying pretty symmetric. And then I'm going to do another cut on the corner of the cheek over here, just kind of cutting up into the side of the hood a little bit. I'm going to cut a little triangle out there, and that's just going to round my cheek all together a little bit. So the cheek is coming in and is just kind of rounded both on both sides. So it'll make more of a round shape to the cheek there. And you can go up, you can go small. I've carved a bunch of these, and you can end up with a smaller face or a larger face, but this is why you want to start with the face a little wider so that you've got room to carve in and still be able to see some of those facial features. Okay, so that's pretty good on the bottom of the cheeks, at least for now. So now I want to finish my nose and eye area, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this stop cut up the side of the nose here as if I were to just keep going up the side like that. And I'm going to stick my knife tip down to where the eye line is. I'll do that on this side too, just like that. And so hopefully you can see that, where I'm just extending those lines up. And so it's important that I still have space between them there. And then from those, I'm going to carve down to where the eye line is, like that. And this is important, so the eye looks like it's opening up there, not that it's just a flat line coming up from the bottom. We get to see a little bit more of the eye that way. Okay. And it's important that I try to keep things symmetric here at this point and level so that the eyes are kind of straight across. Okay. And now I can smooth out the side of my nose right up into there like that. I may need to put another stop cut there. I can do the same thing on the other side. Smooth out the side of my nose right up here like this. Okay. And you might need to do that a few times. You might need to repeat some of those cuts to get all the wood boogers out and make it clean, right? So you can start to see that. Now, I do want to round this nose a little bit more. I'm going to come down now about halfway down the nose and very lightly kind of taper this back towards the forehead. And I'm looking for symmetry here now as I'm tapering it back. It is going to be pretty flat, and that's fine. I'm going to keep extending the angle across the front so that the front of the nose is not, completely flat. That would look a little weird. Okay, and then I'm going to flip it around and I'm going to do a similar thing on the bottom here. Now I can start to round the corners of the nose here and here. And then I want to keep those symmetric, and I want to shave that last part off there. Now you can decide, do you want to make it perfectly round? Do you want it kind of with some angularity to it? However you want. I'm going to clean up now the sides of the nose again, make them just a little bit deeper now that I've done that. That makes the nose stand out a little more. And it's almost like a relief carving here, where we're just carving down into the flat surface. We want to make that distinction, and then I may even flatten the cheek and round those hard corners off. So you're going to spend a little bit of time here kind of rounding the cheeks and the nose however you want. Notice every time I do it, it's just a little bit different. The shape comes out a little bit different, and that's okay. Just add some character. Okay. Now, last thing I want to do is I want to make sure these eyes are nice and deep. So I'm just going to extend those so they're really almost all the way across. I want to make them pretty much as wide as the hood there. Okay, so I'm just going to extend those so they're a little wider, and that's going to make it so I can carve those eyes in there better. So I've got that nice notch in there on the left side and the right side for the eyes. Now, you have two options for the eyes. You have, I'm going to call these your happy eyes, and I'm going to call these your sleepy eyes. Now, I'm going to carve the happy eyes on this one because my guess is most people want to see those, but then I'm going to show you how to carve the sleepy ones as well. For both of them, I'm going to start with the tip of my knife, and I'm just going to place a stop cut straight along that eye slit there. And so you can see that right there. Okay. And I can do that on the other one as well, just like that. Okay. Now for the happy eyes, I want to carve like a little arch, just like a little arch over here going up, not down, but up. And so I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I'm going to carve just a really, it's going to be hard for you to see here, carve just a small arc from one end to the other. I'm just taking the tip of my knife and carving just a really small arc. And I'm going to repeat that a couple times until I can get that out. And I'm really just trying to carve a little slit. There we go. And so it's really just a little slit. Okay, but it should be kind of arced up. And don't make it, if you make it too big, it'll start to look like you need to have something else in there. You just want it to be that little, sorry, this little blue clove thing is bothering me. Gotta get it out of there. There we go. All right, there you can see the slit, right? And so that kind of looks kind of more like happy eyes, like it's like he's smiling. I'm gonna have to flip him around and do the same thing on the other eye. Just a little bit of an arc. Using the tip of my knife is where you want a nice thin tip. Otherwise, you're just packing more wood back in there, whereas you really want to be cutting it out and then being able to draw the chips out, resist the temptation of prying. Okay, that's pretty good. And then you'll notice that for the eyes, like I'm not painting or doing anything fancy with them. I'm just cutting those slits out, and then when I paint them, I just paint the eyebrows right above there on the flat part, and you can see the eyes in there. It works great for this kind of folk art effect. Okay, so that's pretty good. Now, I did say I'd tell you if you want to do the sleepy eyes, I do it a little bit different. What I do for that is I still carve that straight across the eye slit, but instead of carving the arc, what I do is I put my knife in very lightly on the corner here, and then I do a triangle that's kind of arced up. So triangle up, further up to the nose, and I just do a straight line cut there. So it's kind of going up on the inside of the nose a little bit more. Again, just a really narrow slit, but that's what it would look like. So that was the entire step 7, carving the face. All right, on to step 8. We're going to carve the beard, and now we're just going to work our way down. We've got the detail on the top. We're going to work our detail down to the bottom. All right, so the beard's going to be pretty straightforward. I want to knock off some corners on the beard, try to be symmetric, and I'm going to knock some corners off. I'm going to cut it back in just a little bit, and I'm going to start shaping it. And you can kind of decide how you want to shape your beard here. Be careful on this, but if you start to get some messes like that, you can bring your knife up and kind of shave it along the top of the arm line there to clean up your cuts a little bit and keep them nice and smooth there, especially once you have the shape of the beard that you kind of want. So I'm just going to kind of knock some corners off like that to round it out a little bit, not a ton. On the top of the beard now, I'm going to carve up across some of these hard corners that I had. And really all I'm trying to do is round the entire beard area and keep it kind of symmetric, right? So I'm rounding towards the top of the beard. Up here on the bottom, I'm rounding towards the bottom. And take my knife and really take some of these hard corners off the bottom of the beard like that. Work on keeping some symmetry. Okay, and I'm going to keep working that until I've got the entire beard carved and faceted. No, flat portion of the beard left anymore. And so I just make shallower and shallower cuts across the front. Eventually, I'm kind of tapering the front down like this. Okay. And maybe I'll carve that in a little bit deeper to separate the beard. You don't have to go too deep because actually when we carve the gloves, we'll go even deeper on the beard there. And then you might want to make some cuts on the side here to just kind of clean that up and make that more separated and defined. So I'm doing kind of an undercut along the corner of the beard and then cutting along just the edge. And that kind of just separates the beard a little bit more and then allows me to smooth that arm area. So I'm going to do that up along the other side here as well. Okay. Very good. All right, so that's pretty good for the shaping of the beard. Now I'm going to carve the mouth or the mustache on. And again, you got a couple options here. You've got the classic smile, or you've got the one that I use on that I call the Sleepy Santa, which is just kind of a upside triangle. I trust you guys to figure out how to carve that upside triangle. I actually trust you guys to figure out how to carve the smile too. But I think I'll carve the smile on this one because I did the happy eyes, and I just suspect that's a little bit more popular. So I'm going to draw on the shape of the smile here, like that. Try to make sure it's pretty symmetric, and then I'm going to draw a little line coming down on each corner. When I carve these smiles, I start on the sides with the tip of my knife like that, and then like that. So I'm not even doing all the way across the mouth. I just cut a chip out of the corner there. And I do the same thing on the other corner like this. Start with the two corners, cut a couple triangle chips out like that. Then I've got the start where now I can take the tip of my knife, draw the rest of that smile, and then I can just kind of extend that cut from the chip across and smooth out the smile. Okay. And then I just repeat those cuts to make it kind of deeper, more even. Cross, watch the tip of your knife, try not to overcut anywhere. Carve that back a little bit deeper. Not really any different than you may carve a smile on a gnome or those kinds of things as well, right? Good. Then I just want to smooth the top. So I take that corner, I extend it out a little bit just to kind of get rid of that hard line on the corner. And then the same thing around the top of the mustache, like that. Smooth that out. I do have a little bit of cleanup work to do in there. I'm going to do that off camera, but to clean up those cuts and get rid of some of those wood boogers. But that's it. That's your smile. If you want to do this one, I don't think he's grumpy. I think he's sleepy, but I just do a hard cut there, and then across the center to take that out. Then I keep extending those cuts out to make that other beard shape. But that's it. We carved the beard. That was step 8. All right, we're getting there. Step 9, we are going to carve the arms, and really we've defined the arm shape pretty well. What we're doing in this step is we're just going to kind of start shaping the arms more. We're not going to get all the way down to the gloves. That'll be the next one. So I'm taking these hard corners and taking them off on each side. I've still got this flat, part on the front. And so I'm just taking these hard corners that we've had here at the top of the arms, smoothing those out. Again, always trying to think about symmetry. So I'll bring it back and look at that. Try to keep them symmetric. Okay. So I'm smoothing the top of the arms. Then I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to take that hard corner off the side, smoothing. Keep extending that across the side like that. Do the same thing over here. Take that hard corner off like this, extending off either side. Okay. And just continuing to round those. Yeah. Now, just like the beard, I'm going to kind of take the corners off at the bottom like this. I'm not going into great detail here because we'll do a little bit more when we switch to the gloves, but I do know I want my arms to come in a little bit further here. I'm going to actually leave a large flat area in the front here that will take care of in the next turn for carving the gloves. Now you notice I didn't do anything on these sides here. I want them to still stick out like they did when we rounded the sides earlier, so that I can kind of have elbows, and then I want my shoulders to kind of go in under the hood like we did on the previous turns. I've still got this flat area here. It looks huge. It looks like really big arms, but partly they are, and they are going to be big arms, but partly when we do the next couple steps, we're going to dig into them and make them a little bit smaller with the gloves and everything else. So that's actually it for the arms. We're going to stop there. That's step 9. All right, we're getting close. Step 10, we're going to carve the gloves. So you can see how these are on here, and we're going to start by drawing where we want the gloves to go. So I'm going to go to a little bit of the side of both sides of the beard here. I want it to be symmetric. I'm going to mark with my pencil where the interior of those sleeves from the coat are going to go. I'm going to draw a line down to where the bottom of the gloves are going to be. So it's going to be about like this. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be symmetric. You make it wider, you can make it narrower, whatever. What you want is you want it to be symmetric. That's the style of this carving. I sketch it on and just make the line a little thicker where I feel like I need to see when I'm cutting. Okay. So that'll work for now. I do still have this center line. I could extend that up as well. I never lost that, and that's good. I want to maintain that. It's going to be important for our gloves. So I'm going to come down one side here. I'm going to take the tip of my knife and I'm going to make a deep, deep cut along the side of that sleeve there. Careful on the bottom here that you don't cut into the bottom of the coat. Okay. I'll do the same thing on the other side. Deep, deep cut. Careful on the bottom. Raising my knife up and pulling it out before I accidentally cut the bottom of the coat. And this will be kind of similar to up above as well. So I'm just going to carve along the edge of that, just kind of like we did on the inside of where the hood was, right? Like that. And I'm just going to try to keep it symmetric and separate the gloves from the sleeves, right? I'm cutting a little bit deeper on the top of the gloves, right under the beard. And this is where I said, our beard is going to go deeper in there just by doing this. I'm going to cut a deep corner cut in on the top of both of those corners like that. Tapered kind of the glove area back, and that's going to add depth to the beard and separation for the gloves. Okay. I'm just going to repeat those cuts a couple times until I've got good separation from the sides of the sleeves, and I've got symmetry. Okay, so I'm going to call that pretty good. Now, I'm going to carve really deep in to make the bottom of the gloves here, and this is where we're going to start to round it a little bit more. So I'm going to make a big triangle corner cut. I'm going in on the side and then undercutting here. Get undercut first if you want, so that the bottom of the glove is kind of tucked back into the sleeve here. This is very similar to carving the bottom of the beard into the hood. I'm going to make, again, a really big cut off the corner there. Maybe repeat it a couple times so that those gloves are really going in. And now you can see that I'm getting deeper when I do that. And that's why we don't have to go too deep up front with the cut on the bottom of the gloves earlier. Okay, that's pretty good. I can keep rounding those a little bit, bringing it up a little bit so that the bottom of those gloves kind of stick out a little bit more. Okay, and then when I've got that kind of rounded about where I want to go, and again, you can use your judgment on how much you want to round them, how deep, how far up you want to go. The main thing is to focus on symmetry. When I'm ready on those there, then I'm going to come to this center line and I'm going to start cutting the separation. So I'm going to start with a stop cut along that center line, and I'm going to rock it up here with the tip going right under the beard. Okay. And then I'm going to make kind of a vertical V cut along that, like that. That's going to separate those out. Okay. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do a similar thing here. I'm going to rock my knife along there. Be very careful not to come down and cut poor Santa's beard off. Cut a nice V cut in on either side of that. And if I've got a little bit of flatness there, I might need to finish that out just with the tip of my knife along that stop cut, like that. So I'm really separating the two gloves down the middle like that. Okay. Clean that up just a little bit. Great. So now I've separated those gloves. Now I need to do a similar thing here as I did on the other corners, is I need to really carve the bottom corners off of these gloves on the middle. So I'm going to carve them in like that and then undercut them across. Get that out. And again, the nice thing is as I go deeper here, I can always clean up my cuts. They start to get a little messy here, but I can always just take my knife and kind of smooth back out along the wood there and keep smoothing, even the sides here as I go. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and cut the bottom of these sleeves off a little bit. They're getting way too pointy there. Technically, we'll shape those on the next step, but it's okay to do now. Okay. So I've got the bottom of the gloves like that. Now I really want to just cut out the thumbs here. So first, I need to cut the top of the thumbs right under the beard. So I'm going to do a hard stop cut under the beard on either side, and then I'm going to cut a corner off the edge of the glove like that. Okay, same thing on this side. And that's kind of the top of the thumb area going back in there, creating that separation. Okay. There we go. And then I'll go ahead and draw it on so you can see it, but I'm going to come down about a third of the way down from the top of the gloves. I'm going to mark where I want the bottom of those thumbs to go here. I'm going to do a 4-way stop cut. So I'm going to put my knife here and rock it in with the tip like that, right on the center of those either way. Okay. And then I'm going to cut a triangle down into it on this side and then up from the bottom like that. Okay. You can do the same thing from the other side, like this and like this. And again, I'm just looking for symmetry there, carving down. Once I have those, I'm going to widen them up a little bit. I'm just going to kind of smooth those out, those corners, and widen that up a little bit like that. There we go. Great. Okay. And then my gloves are pretty much done. You can see I've got a little bit of cleanup work to do. I may want to round some of these corners off a little bit, but my gloves are basically done at this point. So that'll be it for step 7, carving the gloves. No, step 10. Sorry, that was step 10, carving the gloves. All right, step 11, we are going to carve the trim. So basically we're just going to add the trim on the sleeves and the front of or the whole coat, bottom of the coat, and we'll be good. So we're almost there. All right, so in the previous step, we carved these gloves out. I'm going to carve the inside of the trim here first by just rounding these corners. You may have been tempted, and you may have gone ahead and done that while you were carving the gloves, which is totally fine. But I'm just going to smooth that out, along the edge where that is. And then this isn't a big mystery. We're going to draw a line on where we want the sleeves to go. I like them to be a little wider towards the bottom and kind of taper towards the top, but it's up to you. So about like that. Again, you can make your trim as wide or as narrow as you want. The key again is just symmetry here. So we want them both to look about the same, right? And again, no big mystery. I'm going to put a stop cut along the side and kind of cut towards it at the top. I'm going to need to carve a little bit of a triangle out there at the edge where it meets up into the beard. I'm going to turn it over and do the same kind of thing down here, like that. Okay. I might need to do more of a stop cut and a side cut if I want to. I'm going to carve a little bit of a triangle down here at the bottom where the sleeve comes into the trim like that. And then once I have it, I'm just going to use the tip of my knife to smooth the edge of the trim. So again, not a lot of mystery here. You've seen very similar cuts further up. Okay. I'm going to pause it and do the same thing to the other side of the coat, and then we'll finish up the trim. Okay, so I finished the trim on the other side of the coat. What I need to do now, actually, before I finish the trim on the bottom, is clean up the front of the coat here. So you can see I've got that really flat part remaining here. I didn't want to take it off earlier because it was, I need to see the lines and everything as I was carving into the other areas. But I'm going to take a quick moment here. I'm using my big long knife again so that I can reach across the front, but I'm going to kind of just smooth this out. So that I've got a nice flat, but not too flat. I don't want it board flat. I just want it kind of flat surface for carving the trim. Now, the interesting thing with these is you got this huge area for the front of the coat, which is kind of cool, and that's the whole point. Is we've got this nice big triangle shape. That's just kind of a fun, folksy shape, and the proportions of everything going up, right? But you got this big area on the front of the coat. I'm going to carve the trim just really boring, straight down and across the bottom. But this would be a great place. If you love painting, I hate painting, but if you love painting, you could carve, an open to the coat here and just paint, a cool design there. I've seen so many great Santas carved that way, or wood burn or whatever. But anyway, I'm just going to carve a very basic trim. So I'm going to start by drawing it out pretty much at the center bottom of each of those gloves, because I know I've got a center line there. And so I'm going to the middle of each glove and carving and just drawing straight down. Okay. And it's going to be about a 1/2 inch wide, but you can make it as wide as you want. I'm going to go to the bottom then, and I'm going to use my finger, and it's going to be about a 1/2 inch up from the bottom. I'm just going to go all the way around, about a 1/2 inch up from the bottom, marking where I want that trim to be. Okay. And then when it comes down the front, I'm going to have it curve across the front there. And then I want this to curve here, more like that. Okay. So that's going to be good enough to carve from. Okay. So again, no big secrets here. I'm going to take my knife. I'm going to draw a stop cut right along there like that. And then I'm going to carve along the side of it up like this, right, all the way down to the bottom. Be careful not to go too deep with the tip, just along that stop cut that I put in. That's going to raise it up just enough that I can come back then with the tip of my knife and do this. Okay. And again, maybe this is somewhere where you'd prefer to, use a V-tool or something like that. That's fine. I kind of like to do as much as I can with a knife, but certainly if you're more comfortable doing it a different way, feel free. Okay, so that's pretty good. Do the same thing down here. I don't think I need to show you all of this, but I will say that this part here, this curved part here, is probably the tricky part, right? So I'm going to kind of draw that in with my knife and then focus on just getting that corner kind of out like that. And then I've got a nice straight line I can do up to the bottom of the glove and back over. And then for the rest of the trim, I'm just going to kind of put stop cuts in and work my way around it like that. So I'm going to pause for a second and wrap that up. Okay, so I have finished carving the trim around the bottom. Pretty straightforward process. Cleaned up the edges, right? I still got a few wood boogers and things to clear out, and it's a little harder to carve this larger piece under the camera and get all of those, but you can clean those up as you go or at the end when you're done. I wanted to show you one last step here on the trim. Is I do like to take just a little corner off the edge all the way around on the bottom. So it kind of looks like the trim is rounded a little bit, and I just take it at a really low angle with my knife and cut straight across the edge all the way around. So it's not a flat or a hard corner on the bottom, and it just kind of looks a little bit more like the bottom of the robe is kind of, rolling in to the ground. But that's it. Okay. So that is step 11, carving the trim. And actually our carving's done, and we will look at step 12. Step 12 is just painting and finishing notes. So pull these guys out here and show you. I carve these pretty straightforward, or I paint them pretty straightforward. First, I do coat them with boiled linseed oil. That's optional. If you want to do that, you can. Then I paint them with acrylic paints, and I use, just a solid red and, blue. You can use whatever colors you want. I always like I mix a little bit of a tan color with a white to get the shade that I like. I like kind of more of an off-white for the trim, and I paint that on the trim. I use brown, obviously, for the gloves, and then I use a skin tone, a peachy kind of skin tone, and blend it with some red on the cheeks. I use different shades of gray and dry brush the beards. And then don't forget to just paint little lines on for the eyebrows at the top. But really straightforward. And then when I'm done, I do finish them with Howard's Feeding Wax. So that is it. That's how to carve these simple folk art Santa. Different kind of carving for me instead of a little from a stick from a board, but super fun. They look great and make great gifts as well. So thank you for watching. Happy whittling.